buildings like this are pretty common in East Cleveland. That's because the city has lost about half of its population since the 80s. Right now, there are dozens of Secret Service agents in Cleveland, and they set up this barricade, although the city itself has a large role to play too. It's already illegal in most Indian states to kill cows or eat their meat. The U.S. Government Accountability Office says those graduating out of foster care face a difficult truth. It's harder for them to get a degree compared to students with a more traditional upbringing, and it's mostly because of money. Mugabe has blamed Western sanctions for economic problems like high unemployment and a weak currency.
Car accident happens, something like that, they don't want to come. You have to insist to make them come, even for ordinary things.
This is Greece's anarchist neighborhood. Athens' Exarchia district has a history of political turmoil, like anti-government protests and riots. Those protests aren't just against the current Greek government, they're against any government. Because of that, Exarchia faces some unusual day-to-day struggles compared to the rest of the city, like little to no police presence.
I think most of the people that live here, old people, middle-aged people, they would like more police.
This pharmacy owner, who didn't want to be identified on camera, has lived and worked in the Exarchia district for 10 years. He said he wanted to remain anonymous because, like many locals, he doesn't want people to assume he's a violent protester. Some people in the district suspect media is tied to the Greek government or will be biased against them, so getting anyone to talk can be tough. In a country where economic and political turmoil has been overwhelmingly intense the past several years, Exarchia is even more heated.
The situation in Greece after the 2009, 2010 started going worse and worse and worse. So people logically started protesting more and more. All started with the facts with Grigoropoulos.
Alexandros Grigorgopoulos was 15 years old when he was shot by police in 2008. It prompted protests that December in the Exarchia neighborhood and in other cities in Greece. The protesters' main target, the Greek government. And since then, protesters and rioters have gathered in the anarchist district every year, commemorating the anniversary.
All the new measures that we're taking all of these years about pensions, minimum wage, all this stuff. Yeah.
So that's when you started agreeing kind of with what the protests were protesting about?
Yeah. Corruption and economic, they go together. I think it was one the result of the other.
For Newsy, I'm Melissa Prax.
I'm tired of having to explain Islam to people. I'm tired of having to explain why Black Lives Matter to people. I'm not gonna sit here and be like, Muslims don't kill people, we're nice, because I've been doing that my whole life and I still get the same BS.
Muslims in America are diverse, but Black Muslims are largely left out of the conversation.
Black kids do not believe me when I say I'm Black. And at the mosque, when it's time to pray, sisters slide their feet away from mine.
It's estimated that Black Muslims make up as much as a third of all Muslims in the US, and about 40% of American-born Muslims are Black, more than any other race. The Muslim population in the US overall is pretty small, but growing.
Get a lot of people that are kind of so ingrained in their culture that, and their biases, that interacting with Black Muslims is like something they don't usually do.
We're for democracy and everyone here is equal and you're free to do whatever you want, but that's not necessarily the case.
Even many American-based Muslim advocacy groups inadvertently focus on immigrants and Arab Muslims living in the US.
Black Muslims that I've spoken to have felt like Muslims of other races don't want to engage with Black Muslims. So I would say we have a lot to work on in terms of race and getting over cultural boundaries.
When it comes to identity, almost half of American Muslims see themselves as Muslim first, American second. That's pretty common for other religious groups in the US.
Not only being a Muslim, not only being a Muslim American, being Somali, being Black, being young, there's a lot of identities that you have to reconcile.
Although Islam and being African American are very big parts of my identity, I think people need to stop and realize that that's not all that there is to me. People get so hung up on these what they think they know, that they fail to see the whole person. And honestly, that's probably the biggest thing that's like a loss on both sides.
For Newsy, I'm Melissa Prax.
The love for another human being is not a religious issue, it's not a race issue, it's not a nationalistic issue, it is a human reality.
Refugees are welcome here.
These rally goers want to welcome more Syrian refugees to St. Louis. Marches like this are happening around the country and worldwide.
Nationally, this is more of an issue now, and with that comes a lot of, like I said, racist rhetoric, but it also means that there are actually people coming now and more people at least paying attention.
St. Louis's resettlement office sponsors about 650 refugees every year, but that number is expected to rise. About 4.8 million Syrians have left the country due to violence. The U.S. has taken in about 10,000 so far. That's not nearly as many as Canada and several other Western nations.
When you see such images of humanity being attacked, you have to do something, you have to say something.
We're just here to welcome refugees. We're not here to get involved in severe political debates or anything.
Syrians without a home.
For Newsy, I'm Melissa Prax. Laws aren't an automatic solution, especially when it comes to child marriage, but the international community always gets pretty excited when legislation against it passes. Look at Nepal. Human Rights Watch says 37% of girls there get married before their 18th birthday. And while the country has implemented benchmarks to stop the practice, the group recently called out Nepal's government for backpedaling its goal by a decade to 2030. But Nepal doesn't even have the highest rates of child marriage. UNICEF data shows Nepal comes in tied for only 9th worldwide. Here's the thing, even after a law passes, countries face barriers like enforcement, cultural practices, and a way to spread the information. In some areas of developing countries, a young girl might be married off so her family can get money. The girl often doesn't have a choice. The other issue with legislation is there can be loopholes. In India, a national law bans child marriage, but that law says a child marriage is voidable, not actually illegal. That means a petition has to be filled out to void the marriage instead of it being automatically outlawed. Yet, a law may be the most plausible step for most countries. Rights groups warn if nothing is done, there will be a continued increase in child marriages. And in Africa, the number of child brides could more than double to 310 million girls by 2050. For Newsy, I'm Melissa Prax.
For normal people, it's very difficult. But for disabled people, it's like a miracle to cross the borders.
As millions flee from violence and conflict zones around the world, those with disabilities are often neglected. Also, aid efforts in refugee camps struggle to be inclusive. Some rights groups have called out the lack of medical care, sanitation, and food accessible to those with disabilities. Plus, having a disability in a conflict zone means you're more likely to be subjected to abuse and violence. About 15% of people worldwide have a disability, but most of the people spearheading and planning aid efforts don't have one themselves. Advocacy groups say the biggest barriers they face are awareness and funding, and while recent efforts hope to change that, it's still hard to tell how big an impact it will have. For Newsy, I'm Melissa Prax. These plastic buckets provide supplemental electricity for a slum in Vietnam. They harness energy much like wind turbines. Old printer motors act as generators, and old motorcycle batteries store the energy. The entire system costs about $44 and supplements electricity in the whole community, or about 14 families. Without the new system, electricity was limited and cost each family about $15 a month. So far, this slum along the Red River is the only area to install the system. The project's creators gave the residents 10 turbines at no cost, but residents were pretty wary at first. The inventor had to go there multiple times to convince them he didn't mean any harm. Not only does the system help Vietnam's poor, it's also environmentally friendly. For Newsy, I'm Melissa Prax.